Do you enjoy listening to the shows like this on your favorite station, KFUO? The production of shows like this is impossible without the help and support of our loyal listeners. It is KFUO Sharathon weekend, so if you'd like to make a generous donation to KFUO Radio, visit kfuo.org and click on the Sharathon icon, or text KFUO to 41444. Thank you, listeners, for allowing KFUO to proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.
You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
It is Sharathon 2025. It is also Friday, which means it is time for our Set Apart to Serve conversation, and really looking forward to chatting about Set Apart to Serve with our friend, Reverend Dr. James Baneck. Today's episode of The Coffee Hour is underwritten in part by Concordia University Chicago. You can learn more about Concordia University Chicago by visiting cuchicago.edu. Joining us today, the Reverend Dr. James Baneck, Executive Director for Pastoral Education for the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod and Set Apart to Serve. Dr. Baneck, welcome back to the Coffee Hour.
Yeah, great to be here.
Set Apart to Serve is a conversation we have every Friday here on the Coffee Hour, just about every Friday. There might be one or two that we might miss here or there.
Great.
Around some holidays. We love to talk about Set Apart to Serve. We love having you on to chat about it. And we get to meet, so many different church workers and those who care about church workers around the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod through this. So thanks, one, for giving us the opportunity to interview guests and share these stories, because it's been very insightful for us. We're on year 3 now, I think, of Set Apart to Serve.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Well, we're really grateful that you're running that every Friday. Thank you.
Well, and thank you for helping us connect with all these great guests to share their stories as well. And to get these guests, you actually get out in the field and meet a lot of these people, whether you're meeting them in person, talking on the phone, or emails, and making these connections. So you're gaining a lot of knowledge, I bet, out in the field as you're talking with people, as you're engaging with so many people, visiting universities, the Concordias, visiting congregations, districts, and I'm sure a whole bunch of other places that you visit through these conversations.
That's right.
What are you learning through these visits? How is Set Apart to Serve shaping how we think about full-time service in church work?
Well, a couple things. One is, all people share Jesus Christ in our vocations. Moms and dads teach their children about Jesus. We share Christ with our neighbor and so on. But God himself ordains the office of the holy ministry, or he commands it. And that's because he lifts up people men who are going to preach the gospel, preach God's word, deliver the sacraments, give pastoral care according to the word. I mean, they're particularly shaped and formed, educated to handle God's word. And then, of course, the Missouri Synod has established 7 other offices called commissioned offices, such as teacher and deaconess and DCE, Director of Christian Education, Director of Parish Music, and some others. But what I think we're learning as we're out, and what we're trying to elevate, is that all of these full-time vocations, they're sacred vocations, they're honorable vocations, they're necessary vocations, because there's only one thing necessary in life, and that's our eternal salvation. And certainly living on this earth as God's children and caring for our neighbor and so on. So what we're learning and what we're trying to teach is that these are very important vocations, and they're very joyful vocations. There's suffering involved in everything on this sinful earth, including these vocations, but there's real joy in being able to teach children about Jesus, or a pastor in the pulpit proclaiming the word Sunday after Sunday. So those are some of the things that we're learning and teaching about these vocations.
Hey, you've been around the LCMS visiting a lot of people over the course of Set Apart to Serve. What are you learning about how the church views formation in church work?
Well, I kind of have a sad side of that and a happy side to that. And one is, especially our lay people, we're trying to teach them that there really is this thing called formation of a church worker. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes we think, or the synod, people out there in the synod think somebody else is doing it. Somebody else is forming these people, or it just happens on its own. But not just in Set Apart to Serve, but always it takes a lot of work to educate, to form a church worker. And so also, I would say that our Concordia universities and our seminaries, they do a fantastic job at forming church workers and teaching them the subjects they need to know, but they're a part of an environment, a culture of church, whether it be chapel or with other church work students, certainly excellent theological professors. But what we're learning is that church work formation and recruitment doesn't just take place at the Concordias. And we've kind of talked about this before on coffee hour, even when I've been here. And I think what people are really starting to grab onto, it's really becoming part of the culture. Matter of fact, we don't call Set Apart to Serve an initiative anymore. We don't even use that word anymore. We call it a culture, because that's just who we are and what we do. And what we're learning is that mom and dad have a great role in forming Christians, their children to be Christian, but they also have a great role in talking to their children about considering church work, about supporting that, about teaching about church work vocations. The Sunday school teacher, the VBS teacher, the lay person at church talking to our youth or other adults about considering, hey, I think you'd be a great pastor. I think you'd be a great Lutheran school teacher. And pastors, I think they always knew their role because they're, the number one influential adults in having people consider church work. But all the more, they are really taking hold of this culture and saying, yeah, I really do have a great responsibility and a great joy in talking to youth and adults about church work. This wasn't in the question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. One of our great statistics lately that we're celebrating is about 2-3 years ago. Every year we do a survey with church workers. And pastors told us a couple of years ago, about 40% of us know about Set Apart to Serve. We're talking to kids about considering church work and so on. And it was even lower than that for commissioned church workers. A year ago, we're up for a new poll here pretty soon. Well, maybe 6 months from now. 88% of all pastors that responded to our survey and commissioned workers said, oh yeah, we know about Set Apart to Serve. We know about our great role and responsibility to tell kids and youth and adults about considering full-time church work. So, that's what we're beginning to learn more and more about, how people are understanding Set Apart to Serve and all of our role in forming church workers from really little on up, even from conception, where mom and dad have that child in the Word, all the way through home and congregational life, and then sending them off to our Concordias and to our seminaries.
You are making lots of visits through this process, and I want to talk about who you get to visit, who you get to meet through this process. We're going to do that in just a moment. We're going to take a short break because we have some Sharathon announcements to share in just a moment. We'll do that, and then we'll be right back with Dr. Baneck right here on the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
I'm Dr. Russell Dawn, president of Concordia University Chicago. I'm thrilled to announce the Prepared to Serve Church Professional Guarantee. Any new student in one of CUC's 6 church work programs will pay no more than $5,000 in annual tuition and required fees guaranteed. Prepared to Serve is a donor-funded initiative. Support future church work students by becoming a funding partner at cuchicago.edu/prepared to serve. Concordia University Chicago. With Christ at the center, we stand tall for the church.
Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Sharathon 2025. It is also Friday, which means it is time for our Set Apart to Serve conversation. We're talking with Reverend Dr. James Baneck, Executive Director for LCMS Pastoral Education, and Set Apart to Serve, and learning about what you've been learning through this whole process of Set Apart to Serve by visiting with so many people around the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Who do you get to meet through this process? I know you're like traveling all the time. When I look at your calendar, it's like always in purple because you're out traveling and meeting people. So
I'm just on vacation a lot.
Oh, so that's how do we get that changed?
No, we do a lot of visiting. There's this Set Apart to Serve is mostly developing strategies and resources for congregations, schools to raise up church workers, as we talked about a few minutes ago. But we are also out amongst the people doing a couple things. One is we are bringing awareness to Set Apart to Serve and sharing face-to-face our strategies and our resources. And we're also meeting with youth in different situations. Set Apart to Serve doesn't necessarily go out and do the recruiting, but when we have the opportunity to do so, we do it. So let's just split that in half a little bit. Bringing awareness, we kind of like to use that old commercial line, we've been everywhere, man, And there are different district conventions who have invited us. And we've been invited to speak 60 minutes, 90 minutes at a district convention. About 4 or 5 of the districts have. And others who haven't necessarily invited us have made Set Apart to Serve a big component of their convention, or at least church work formation. So we've been out with the districts and the laity. We've been at workshops and events like with the LWML. We'll be at the LWML convention this summer. They've been just fantastic supporters of Set Apart to Serve. And we're trying to help LWML women realize that they're strong advocates of Set Apart to Serve in their local congregation. We're also working on different pilots. So we're out there talking with, for instance, circuit visitors. We're just starting some of these pilots, but a number of them have just in the last week said, oh yeah, we're on board. A number of them, about 12 to 15. And we will be working with them about how they are already and how they can all the more talk about Set Apart to Serve, how they can talk to their pastors at Winkles and such about church work formation and recruitment. We're also piloting with school principals. We're just accumulating those names right now. But we've done pilots, in previous years, but these are the ones that are coming up where we're meeting people. And so we'll be meeting these principals, especially of how are you using our CPH Set Apart to Serve curriculum? And how can we make that ongoing year after year? How can we make it better? What's great about it? What could be improved with it? So we're meeting with principals. We're meeting with all the education execs, either through Zooms or personally. Quarterly, we send them an e-news talking about how they can continue to be advocates with their teachers, but we do have one-on-one time with them as well. We are meeting face-to-face with district presidents, and we're never sure what to call these because every district has a different name for them, but we've called them focus groups now, and that can be a committee or a task force or a working group. And what we want to do is we're helping districts establish their focus group within their district, like an education committee or an evangelism committee. So we're out there meeting with them. And we did it last year and we learned some things from especially those focus groups, like we could have done better. And so we're saying to them this year, we're adding new ones and we're bringing on the former ones and saying, we think we can do this better. Walk with us so that we can walk beside you all the more in establishing, your committee and whatever. So those are some of and the big ones are like our Concordia universities. We're meeting with whether it be the presidents, some of the presidents, one of them is on our advisory council. That's how we're out with people as well, with their recruitment officers, learning many things about, what's the mind of a church work student and how do we best use them to be recruiters of their friends and down into their congregations and such. And the seminaries have been phenomenal partners. We're meeting with them face to face, whether it be the presidents themselves or the provosts or the recruitment officers. Sometimes we're meeting every week, face to face or on Zoom, talking about what's going on out in the synod. How can we be good advocates for Set Apart to Serve as we're trying to grow this culture? The other side is when we're actually with the youth, and that's a lot of fun too. And not only are we with the youth, but we are also then with adults and youth counselors. And like we'll be at the youth gathering this summer, and the entire Missouri Synod booth, like last time, will be all Set Apart to Serve. And we'll have different people from this building. They are like missionaries and National Mission and LCMS schools and talking to our youth about considering church work. So there we're actually kind of doing the recruiting. And then we also have a number of the adults that are bringing youth are volunteers, actually. And so we'll be having 3 sessions. One of the sessions, breakout sessions, is just with those adults and saying, hey, you're really active in youth and in the church. How about you considering being a full-time church worker, whether that be a DCE or a Lutheran school teacher or a pastor and so on. We will be going to all 3 Higher Things gatherings this year. And like last year, we're working with Higher Things leadership really well also, just as we are with the youth gathering. But the Higher Things, we are working on young adult representatives from the Concordias who are in church work programs. We did this last year and it worked so well. We're going to do it again this year. We kind of talked about budget offline and we said, can we afford to keep doing this? And we said, it's so important. We've got to do this. And so there will be about 2 young adult representatives at each of the Higher Things. And rather than us older people, we're on radio, but like I'm in my 60s and have gray hair. And so we want to bring some youth to the table and to talk to the other, like the Higher Things youth about talking about the life at a Concordia or how they made their decision to be church workers and so on. I just worked it out this week where we're going to go to one of our camps to one of our greatest districts of North Dakota. I used to be district president there, but I will be spending about 4 hours with the youth at their youth camp in July, visiting with those kids. Also the youth counselors at the camps. And Andy, weren't you youth counselor at one time?
I was.
I was thinking
Yeah.
you were. So you kind of know that world a little bit. But anyway, so there'll be a pilot for us as to how do we work with at a camp setting, and that is a unique setting. I've been to
definitely.
I've been to camp, led camp youth encounter camps at our North Dakota camp, and so that'll be kind of fun to be able to test out, how we might talk to camp kids, youth, and in the camp counselors about considering church work. Oh, the other one is CO and Christ Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Those are our seminary programs. I do know that Christ Academy is full. They can't take any more. I think CO I think is just about there as well. And they're filling up. They've gone through some leadership transitions, but both are excellent programs. And I will be at both of those. For Christ Academy, I will be at Fort Wayne to teach the Augsburg Confession to young high school boys. And last time I was there, I think I maybe told the story before, but the females said, we want to learn about the Augsburg Confession too, because I didn't teach the females.
What?
So this year, I will be teaching the Augsburg Confession to both. And we relate that to church work. But the confessions is how we understand the scriptures, right? Who is God and who is Christ and what is the church and who are church workers and so on. And how that applies then to being a church worker. Because not all those kids, youth, are actually thinking about church work, but we try to get them to think about it more and more.
You've talked about a lot of different partnerships, a lot of different places you've been able to visit, and the different organizations that you've been able to work with Set Apart to Serve. And KFUO is one of those. Talk about a little bit about how we've been able to partner with Set Apart to Serve, that KFUO Set Apart to Serve collaboration, how that's been beneficial.
It's been super. I just can't express how appreciative I am that every Friday's coffee hour is set apart to serve. And I think we've done this for 2-3 years already, where we've had guests on. Sometimes we have rebroadcasts, but not very often. Or if there's a special event going on out in the synod, and then I complain that it wasn't set up to serve. But not that I do that often. But we've had different church workers on. We've had university and seminary, whether professors or recruiters. We just had a number of people on approaching set apart to serve at all different angles and perspectives. And so we've actually used these broadcasts and for a number of purposes. We repurpose them. For instance, like our ed execs, we always, every 3 months, we talk about, here's one show on coffee hour we just really want you to listen to again. And so it's just built up a fantastic library with all of our resources, including the great coffee hours. Is how do we get people to know that they're there and to listen to them? So, to the audience out there, share them with your friends and family and neighbors and your enemies, and share them with everybody. And because we're building this culture of church work, and coffee hour KFU has been great.
Well, we've certainly enjoyed the conversations we've had with you and the many guests that have been part of our Set Apart to Serve conversations. It's been a blast. We've learned a lot. What's one church work office that you've learned about that you didn't know much about before? Obviously, you knew a lot about being a pastor because you're a pastor. But you mentioned there are like 7 different commissioned offices as well. What's one that you've learned more about that you really didn't know much about before?
One that maybe I didn't know about or appreciate as much, even though I'm a church musician major from Concordia, St. Paul, Minnesota, is just the important work of our musicians. I can't say I really didn't know about any of them. I mean, just, I've been in the synod for a lot of years. But I think just the work and the importance of that music leadership, because music is so important in our liturgy and in the life of our church, even at home where we're singing hymns together and so on. So that vocation is important, and it's really needed, and we need really good musicians to lead the church's liturgy and song.
The church's song is certainly important, and having talented and faithful individuals to do that is certainly valuable. And we've learned a lot about directors of parish music through these conversations. I have enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being our guest today, Dr. Baneck, and we look forward to more conversations in the future.
Great. Thank you so much.
You can learn more about Set Apart to Serve by visiting lcms.org/SAS. You're listening to the Coffee Hour during Sharathon 2025. We'll have some Sharathon updates for you in just a moment. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit kfuo.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@kfuo.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.